Hello. Hello to the new viewers. That's who I'm most interested in. The old viewers could go do whatever they want to do. Those new viewers, that turnover is fine. New viewers, after all these years, the new viewers, analytics told me, oh, there's new viewers. And I'm like, really? I've been trying to talk to these old viewers. Nothing against the old viewers. But I need to explain to you new viewers. That's what I started this new, show for, is the Proglib show. Progressive Libertarianism 4.0, episode 4.0. Bad libertarians. Bad. Wait, I'm sorry. God, I gotta practice that. On liberty. This is a non-monetized show. You gotta keep that in mind, right? I'm not trying to make money. But I was convinced by a friend who then committed suicide entirely just to prove his point. That, hey, you should help a brother out and make your videos preachy and tell people what to think. And I was always like, I don't want to tell people what to think. This is just my idea. But then I read, no, you guys need to think this. So it's a show about liberty. Now, the progressive part people get, because right now it happens to be that I have some progressive, positions. Oh, wait, am I making noise over on the channel? Is it working? Let's see. Right now it happens to be that I have some, it seems like it's working. So anyway, I believe in some progressive positions right now. Like we need, we need more safety nets. We need national health care, duh, and things like that. But, things could swing so far to the other side conceivably, but it'd be hard to imagine as a realistic thing that I would argue for things you might think are more conservative. I mean, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe democracy is here to decide hard questions like what counts as murder, right? That's why that's state law. So, I mean, I'm willing to split up a lot of stuff down to the states, and that could be considered conservative, I was inclined to be for the multi-payer option for national health care, and call it national health care, not have a socialized system, not have where, government hospitals, but have maybe not even single payer. I thought multi-payer. The only problem with multi-payer is that the insurance companies are a bunch of assholes. Late stage capitalism is the second half of capitalism. That's the problem with capitalism. Entrepreneurs are great. Somebody builds an aeroplane, and it's because it's a dream of theirs, and they also want to make money and be a success at it. Great. That side of whatever capitalism means, that part's great. But the part where you have vulture capitalists coming in and buying up companies, it's like the epitome of how that part of capitalism, because there's so many different terms. I'm a capitalist. But that decay of capitalism, the decadence of what people call capitalism, and it really shouldn't be, where the MBAs come in, and the History Channel to me. It's like the History Channel has, alien conspiracies. It's like somebody could have made a good living off of a television channel for people that actually like history. But that just didn't last. And people that actually like documentaries. But that just didn't last. But it's not that there isn't a market there for some businessman to have a reasonable idea of the size of the market and, and make his money or her money off of history or music videos or any of these things. But the idea to juice the last bit out is always goes in this sort of TNA, what can we churn out kind of direction. Anyway, that's not the point of this video. So the point of this video was to talk about the libertarian part, because new viewers, you got to understand, I stood up for social justice warriors. Now, I'm not a social justice warrior. I fight for social justice. You could call me a social justice warrior, but I was told that, I'm not a social justice warrior, what all those complainers were complaining about with that term. But I stood up for them anyway. It's like, fuck you. Social justice is great. Somebody's going to war for it. Okay, well, they should be a social justice peace activist like me, but whatever, close enough. I'm not going to side with people putting them down. Right, so if anything, people think, some people might think I'm, super progressive. So that's not the hard part. The hard part for people is, why would I say I'm libertarian when I'm not one of these Koch brother, what was that? Not Jim Birch. The John Birch Society. Was that it? I'm not one of those kind of libertarians. Now, those people are anti-taxes. They think liberty is something that's interfered with by the state. And the idea of liberty is simple to them. Oh, I'm against the state. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want the rules from the state. Well, this guy, John Stuart Mill on liberty, he makes quite clear. I mean, the most important point to me, now, I'm not saying that I'm the definitive reviewer, but I read On Liberty, I don't know how many times I've read it. Like the Constitution, I enjoy reading it. There's some politically incorrect stuff, he was a little bit of, from his own time or whatever. But it's well written. It's a good kind of writing. I really enjoy the kind of voice. Not everybody that wrote it this time period has a grammar and stuff that's incisive and modern. This is part of what our version of modern, where the voice came from. But anyway, he makes the huge point about society prohibits things. Society inhibits your liberty. You don't need a law against being homosexual if people in the town are going to shun you, won't employ you, might stone you to death, right? If there was no law saying you could go victimize Native Americans in California during the gold rush, but the law enforcement looked the other way and let that be the fact. And so society was the one perpetrating the injustice against liberty. So it's not just government that can do that. And liberty can be measured, I say, in, with measuring sticks, with, timepieces and stuff. You can measure, a person's freedom to do the activities that they want to do, to move to the places that they want to go to exercise what we would call freedom. And the things that interfere with liberty are multitudinous, and they certainly are not merely the government. If a person is in the so-called state of nature, this hypothetical idea of a hermit individual living in the state of nature on their own, where nobody could stop them from doing everything, yeah, but they also can't go 100 miles away, They can't go to the other side of the earth, right? They can't paint because they don't have the paints. They don't have the facility to make the pigments necessary to paint in multiple colors, and a million other things that involve expression, involve freedom of movement, that involve freedom of activity, I guess it would be a good way to put it. There's lots of kinds of freedoms that really we rely on society to do. The ability, like in California growing up, you'd meet a lot of people that in the 70s and 80s, and 60s as well, migrated from the East Coast to the West Coast through, they and their sister decided they'd hitchhike. Well, that's because there's public roads that you can do that facilitated their liberty to relocate like that. The fact that the United States has all of these states, remember, a state is a nation, right? But it has all of these states where they're not quite like nations because you're allowed to go back and forth with the other states. That's a unique situation, right? So that is a measurable amount of liberty. Not paying taxes as a philosophy, which I call anti-taxitarians, that's fine. I can understand that you'd believe in that. I even understand that there's some sorts of anarchist or conservative libertarians that could rightfully be called libertarian that would believe, taxes are immoral, like they try to say. They would be misguided because taxes are just a homeowner's fee on a shared land. We all own all of the United States land, so you pay a fee to stay in the union that gets to decide what to do with all of the national land and resources. That increases your liberty, so you ought to be for that. But I understand certain ideas of liberty where, okay, they would be against that. Now, I think the U.S. Constitution is a sufficiently libertarian document to give it respect as a libertarian. Is it the absolute libertarianism? There is no such thing. It's a statement of a kind of libertarianism that is not limited to certain races or people. It's a philosophy about that, like a constitution that I think limits the government, and that should, count as a libertarian. But some people would say, no, it's not enough liberty, and they might, argue with the fact that the Constitution allows this organization to levy taxes on its own. Maybe the people in a libertarian state, a true libertarian state, maybe only the people could vote on the amount of tax or whatever. That's arguable. But the problem with a lot of conservatives, like, the Stefan Molyneux kind of branch, is that they're really more reactionary. And they're concerned with this false idea of the negative liberty and positive liberty, like the restrictions on liberty, again, by the government generally, and they ignore the private sector's restrictions on liberty. But whatever, they make these philosophical arguments, which we can have, but then they pull it into a long direction. Where, for example, no libertarian, conservative, or liberal, or progressive, or any kind of libertarian should support borders. Borders are artificial. People ought to be able to go wherever they can go. Now, they might be limited by practical situations like, they don't know the language. It's going to be hard to get a job. Things like that. But the idea that it would be like, you're an illegal person because you decided to go from this latitude to this latitude. I don't really think so, because I'm a libertarian. Conservative libertarians should agree. Now, one thing that conservative libertarians have traditionally agreed on, that's one that about half of even these John Birchers might agree with. Borders, is like 50%. I'm probably overestimating like a little bit, but has been like the decriminalization of drugs. Because if you're going to do something that harms just yourself, then, go for it. That's complicated. Something that harms just yourself, it can affect other people's liberty, and we have to take that seriously. But basically, all of us libertarians are on the basic, first principle. It's up to you if you're going to do that thing. Where that becomes difficult is not so much in recreational drugs, but in actual medicinal drugs. Should people be allowed to do experimental medicinal procedures, for example? Well, I think it's kind of nice that if they're really motivated, that there's countries that allow them to, right? And that's sort of a libertarian principle, that maybe some liberties are not easy to express everywhere, but at least there's somewhere you can go if you put in the extra effort, even though that might mean that, the wealthy get to do it. So the wealthy get to fly down to Mexico and do some experimental thing that's probably not good for them because it hasn't been, verified by sort of the most responsible part of the scientific establishment. But sometimes they get verified later. So, should people have the chance to be an early adopter? Because otherwise my time's going to run out on my terminal illness. Well, I could see the advantage, like I say, of having an escape route where certain people can. But the problem is that people are easily emotionally manipulated when they have a terminal illness, and telling them they can go spend their family's, remaining fortune doing something that, that 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 times is not going to turn out to be of any value at all, because they're gambling on that 20% or 10% where it is going to turn out to be the, therapy of the future. There's an argument sociologically to let people take that risk just so as a method to allow ourselves to experiment on human beings that are willing to try. But to just let everybody do it, like to have a society where there was no restrictions on the snake oil salesman, no restrictions on the people that feel ugly to using a beauty cream with magic promises, does that really increase liberty? Like if somebody is mentally ill and salesmen are allowed to manipulate them due to their mental illness or perhaps even learning disabilities, is that liberty? Is it liberty if somebody who's a 35-year-old adult with the so-called mentality of a 20-year-old, because of their learning disability, and 20 years old is a majority, is it infringing on their liberty if there's regulations about how much people, with 150 IQ can manipulate and do marketing copy to fuck that person over and victimize them? Well, I think you can tell where my position is. No, I think it's more difficult. The question of liberty is complicated. It's certainly not just a question of can you be taxed. And any so-called conservative libertarian that has the gall to also support the Constitution as I do certainly can't be anti-tax, because the Constitution in the main body gives the power of the United States government to do all kinds of taxes and levies and fees, duties, basically of all types. Because we're in a union, we're joined together to increase our liberty. For example, by having law and order and assuring that we're not just wantonly stole from where there's no ramifications on the thieves, and where there's multiple jurisdictions. If the local sheriff is corrupt and the law is corrupt, you can bring in the state or the federal police, and vice versa. Sometimes it's the federal people that are corrupt and the state comes in and does it. Many checks and balances creates liberty because people can live in a state of reliability. If you're going to travel the world needs to be safe. Right? If you're going to travel the United States, you might go into a state where they don't like your kind. But if there's law and order, you're not going to get killed. You might feel uncomfortable and not want to come back, and that would probably be acceptable. I mean, it's not cool, but acceptable. Whereas if you're going to go through a certain state and it's like going over, the Andes in 1977, and you're probably going to get killed and kidnapped and whatever, then you don't have the liberty to take that trip. Well, yeah, you do have the liberty as long as you take a gun and protect yourself. Yeah, well, that's less liberty than if you can just tour it. So, conservative so-called libertarians, their fail point is that they often forget that we're talking about society and the total amount of liberty. They complain that, oh, you can't even say this or that anymore, which when they're talking about things that they do say, so obviously can say. And yet, they seem to deny that there's even a problem with the liberty quotient. So this is a time of the week where, I like to live upload because it's easy. Then I don't have to edit or anything like that. Let me see if anybody's in here. Oh, one person, one viewer, one fantastic viewer, a new viewer, Alex Schmidt. These same people want to be libertarian yet want to repeal the 19th. Oh, what was the 19th? Okay, I have to look that up. Fine. Make me look it up. It's the internet. It's the 21st century. 19th Amendment. I'm sure you're talking about the 19th Amendment. I also know I could be wrong. I didn't memorize it. Sorry. It guarantees all American women, the women, the right to vote. That's a good one. You're a good man, Alex. Yeah, no, well, we have a lot of reactionaries claiming to be libertarian, right? And you can really see it, and it's funny because a lot of feedback I've gotten around Reddit and arguing on, the last few years, people are literally like, you're the one is why we have Trump. What you just said is why Trump's gonna win in 2020. Why he won 2016? What you said made me vote. That's reactionism. That's reactionary. What you did made me vote a certain way. Well, my vote is a reaction. And a lot of reactionaries hide under libertarianism as if their last resort is to say, well, I can't justify my beliefs, but you're trying to stop them, so I justify them through liberty. And that's, hey, Faith. Lol indeed. Well, I'm about to go, but I hate to leave. Faith, you're here. Do you ever want to... Boy, I've known you for a long time. You're not a newcomer, but I do... I'm going to think of you as a newcomer. You know why? Because I'm all about the newcomers, and I don't want to leave you out. It's the newcomers. I had a revelation. The new people that are watching this, that have never seen me before, they're the ones that want to understand anti-taxitarian and so on. I'm glad to see you too, Faith. All right, you remind me I need to have a hangout with some DOS Spook and Barklord. Barklord's been talking about it. We gotta do that. All right. Well, I hate to go now, but that's the end of my video. So what else am I gonna do? It wouldn't make sense anything else. I could always come back, but I have to leave now no matter what anyway. So cheers. You guys should read this book here on Stuart Mill's Liberty. It's a great book. There's a few, hashtag not the 21st century parts, a little bit. But if you know anything about history, you'll see that relatively speaking, John was doing a good job. John did a good job. And philosophically, there's just some constructions there that, they map well to a pragmatic, from the point of progress, definition. And illusions exist, of course.